Ben Wonder presents A Case of Distrust. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new Let's Play. This is a brand new game. This isn't just a brand new Let's Play. This is a brand new game. It came out this week. It came out last week, depending on when I upload this, when this is going to start. I've actually kind of lost track of how my uploads are working at the moment. Yeah. So what happened? The reason I'm doing this, is at work. Well, it was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and at work they gave me a £20 Steam voucher because they didn't know what to buy me because I'd only been there for a week, and I hadn't really talked about anything. I'm very quiet at times, so I can be very kind of insular and stuff. So, I thought, you know what, just to be like, woo, and kind of show off a little bit with that, I thought I would I would get a game with that, and that'd be my next Let's Play. And with me wanting a break from Vampire the Masquerade Redemption, and kind of been feeling a bit about it, I thought, I'll take a break from that, and I'll play this new game, and that I've just kind of gotten. Actually, I will get the game, and then I will play it, and this is one that seems to fit, because looking at the description, it's a puzzly, detective-y, deduction-y, contradiction-y style game with a murder in it, I'm guessing from the kind of chalk outline. And you know me and murder, puzzle, deduction games, all they need is one with a really cool hat. I say that like the hat in contradiction isn't really good, but whatever. Hats and puzzles, and I know I'm sorted. Let's go. I don't know what this game is like. There aren't many reviews out, and normally I actually have a look at how long to beat to see how long a game is. But of course, with this being a brand new game, there aren't any such statistics. So we'll find out how long this is as we play through. Let's find out. A Case of Distrust. Ooh, very nice effect. That's a line. I awoke in my desk chair. Across from me were his piercing amber eyes. They surprised me at first, but I should have known he'd be there. I stretched and said mid-yawn, "Not very nice to sneak into a sleeping woman's apartment," but his stare just continued. Ooh, so this is like is this like a visually novel-y thingy? I laughed at his glare. I cursed the open window. Of course, that's how he'd entered. I'd hoped to finally rest my eyes a while, but fate often disagreed with me. I knew I didn't have what he wanted. Reaching into my coat, I took out my knife and flicked it open. Give him the knife? No. I held the knife steady, while staring back at him. "Look," I said, nodding towards the desk. "That's all there is. Take it or leave it." But a detective knows when she's beat, and I knew then. He wanted to search the place, and that's what he would do. I sighed, knowing my weakness for his type. "All right," I said. "Let's look." Oh, it's a cat. He let out a gleeful meow in victory. I cut a piece of my apple that the cat had rejected. Always the sole winner, I jabbed. But I was smiling too, because I was telling the truth. There was absolutely no other food in my apartment. The cat often dropped by to scavenge. He made a lot of noise when he thought I was holding out on him. But right now, the place was clean empty. No food anywhere. I had to prove it to him. Okay. The cat had waltzed into my apartment a few years earlier. He kept coming back, though there was rarely a morsel to eat. He continued his loud mewing until I proved to him the place was empty of food. Ooh, talk. "It doesn't matter how doe-eyed you are, cutie pie. We've got no food around," I told him. He licked his chops and looked at me. Apparently he still didn't believe that. I needed to contradict him somehow, although he's not said anything, so I can't actually never mind. To show him something in the apartment that would prove it was empty of food. Well, we haven't got anything. I went back to the apartment to search for clues that I could show to him. Yeah, we haven't got anything to show him. Ooh, a Maltese Falcon. I kept a small statue underneath the side table. It had been police evidence in a crime, and its owner hadn't wanted it back. I took a shine to it, so I snagged it for myself on my way out of the department. Packed cigarettes were the latest trend, but I still preferred to roll my own. The ashtray was evidence that it was a practiced skill. I suppose I had a lot of free time back then. That lamp had belonged to my Uncle Lewis. He'd been an SFPD officer, one who argued policewomen could be good detectives, even while the others jeered at me. I knew he'd been right, but my current workload didn't help that claim. I thought about Lewis. More often than I wanted. I was lousy at handling the emotions behind those thoughts. Emotions. I'd taken copies of old murder cases from the SFPD records when I'd left. I loved reading through them, that's weird, reading through them, even though my own contributions were minimal. At that time I longed for those type of jobs. The truth was, any work was hard to find for a female detective. No, you just have to be an old woman written by Agatha Christie. Right. A newspaper was flopped on the floor, its headline about the death of Lenin, leader of the Red Menace sweeping Russia. It seemed the Bolsheviks had lost their head. So this is early 30s? Maybe late 20s. I don't know. My old notebook, now filled to the brim. I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Never know what can be useful. The second half had my current bunk, adultery cases. The only things I'd get hired to do. Whatever my findings, my employers often refused to believe me. It was thankless work, but even that was hard to come by. And, ooh, the regular white icebox, tinged yellow with age, half blocked the kitchen doorway. My income rarely kept much stocked in it, and right now it was empty. Okay, so that, I assume, no evidence. I have a lot of random evidence. Icebox, which is empty. Oh, this is kept. How delightful. How absolutely delightful. That's going to make things very easy to find it. Actually, you can go back and read stuff. That's brilliant. Yeah, talk to the cat, because the face ain't listening. Doesn't matter how dour you are, blah, 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 blah. We need to contradict him. We shall contradict him with the fridge. Used to contradict. I opened the icebox to the cat, so the cat could see inside. Empty, I told him. The cat... Okay, I got an achievement for doing the tutorial. Yay! The cat looked quizzically at the open door, then back at me. Sorry, fella. There's no grub in there for me either. He stared at me with eyes as disappointed as I felt. Those big yellows always got to my soul. Thoughts of my family filled my head. My parents were still in Chicago, where they'd moved our family in my final year of schooling. I'd returned to California, but they maintained that there were better job prospects for my father in Chicago. His alcoholism. I mean, this is Noir, 20s, 30s. It's going to be a thing. His alcoholism. I'd cost him his job and nearly his life. He'd attempted a clean start many times, but even the Volstead Act couldn't to pry open the grip that gin had on him. But my mother stuck by him. Whether for her godliness or her stubbornness, I never knew. I always thought her berating only chased him to the speakeasies, but it was the only way she'd known to love him. Most of their money came from my late grandmother's trust, but those funds were barely a trickle. I often dreamed of saving enough to help them. My mind spiraled into the usual series of questions. Had I even impacted the women's movement? Had I made any change on society at all? Was my plodding career worth losing traditional happiness? What's traditional happiness? What was the point in the life I had chosen? Oh. Question? Question mark? Is it still a question mark in America? Because I know the exclamation mark is an exclamation point. So is it a question point or is it a question mark? Because if it's a question point, that's consistent. If it's a question mark, it's a... Why? Why not? Why not? Right, move on. A loud meow from the cat snapped my thoughts back into the moment. I took a deep breath and grinned back at him. Guess you can scram now, I said. Nobody's going to come knocking with food for you, fella. There immediately came a banging on the front door. Stupid cat. Beyond a nuisance, this cat was psychic too. You order out? I asked him. Opened the door. In the doorway was the regrettably familiar face of Connor Green, which is why the background is now green. His company churned my stomach. It might have been his bergamot perfume, which hung around my nostrils like a lingering, unwanted guest. Just like him. Or that sordid... Not the nostrils, the lingering, unwanted... Never mind. Or that sordid smile, which was rather plastered on his face. He stared at me through the doorway with a coy smile. Well, ain't you gonna invite me inside? I started closing the door. But he stuck out a foot to stop me. Hey now, he chided. Vile way to treat a customer, Maloney. Or Malone. It's Malone because we're American, although it's an Italian. So that was his angle. Hiring me as a detective. I wondered what a bootlegger would need with a private eye, but he answered without a prompt. I'll make this quick. I can't take this to the hog house or the pigs would laugh me out. And other dicks just aren't as tempting. His grin widened. You're asking for a slap. Can I slap you at some point? Thought this was going to be quick, I said. I started rolling a cigarette. It wasn't quick. I'd already rolled and lit. Lighted? Lit. I'd already rolled and lit a second smoke. Yeah, lit. A second smoke when Green finally finished his story. I noted the important bits in my book. It had started with a letter, slipped under his door in a white envelope. The envelope contained a single typewritten leaf, which he handed to me. It read, "End your game, or we'll end you." It had no signature. What? Am I going to have to stop playing now? It had no signature. No, it was written to him. It's all right. We can keep playing. It had no signature, instead ending with only a small scribble in the bottom right corner that resembled a black hand. Green had a lead on a new rum-running scheme, a connection from Vancouver. He'd given a Canadians. He'd given a sample to Tiny Paul, the gangster who ran the Tin Spoon Speakeasy for mob boss Jerry Ferry. They'd agreed to buy in for more. Green surmised the letter was about his rum run. He suspected Redstone Stable, another bootlegger, of sending the letter. He told me that Stable ran a barbershop during the day and gave me the address. Green needed to know who the threat was from. He'd get Paul's gang to deal with them and continue his scheme to get rich. If I go snooping myself, he concluded. Folks say I'm not trusting people. No trust leads to no customers. I need to play it low-key, which is where you come in. I raised an eyebrow and stared at him through the cigarette smoke. Something in his yarn was still twisted. He must have noticed my reticence because he said, "You know, I worked closely with Lewis. I'm sure he'd want to protect me as much as any other victim." My uncle. Ooh, what? Okay, so there's... Ooh, branching storyline. I'd finally accepted his death. I was still searching for answers. After his death, he'd been a man obsessed with helping victims and bringing justice to those beyond salvation. With that ethos, I never understood how he could have taken his own life. Those thoughts haunted me. I'd quit the SFBD and started my own practice, taking his philosophy. Was Green worth my time? Would he be worth Lewis's? Green had tipped off my uncle in a few cases. I wondered if that was enough to warrant protection. Before I could think past my headache, he threw a bill in my lap. Keep the C note as a retainer. And don't worry about getting in touch. I'll find you later for a chat. He turned down the hallway and I let him go. If he was willing to give me $100 with no commitment, I wouldn't stop him. I turned back to the apartment, still confused about the whole story. My headache wasn't helping either. Whenever I lacked clarity, a trip to Southern Coffee was usually the cure. I'd mounted a gold plate on the outside that read, PC Malone, Private Investigator. There was only one place I needed to go to clear my head. Southern Coffee. Southern Coffee was a basement dive. It wasn't modern, hip, or ever busy. And it was my favorite place to down some paint, especially in the company of the best bartender in the city. I stepped into the taxi and rocked into a comfortable position on the back seat. I thought about starting a chat with the driver. Well, let's talk to him. We might get some evidence about this case, or we might get a new case. If nothing else, it might make things interesting. Let's talk. We talked about the weather and not much else. Oh, a British taxi man. Sometimes taxi cab drivers make poor conversation partners. That was disappointing. Southern Coffee was an automat diner. Ethel Burgess, the lone waitress, was friendly to help with any inquiry. Of course, if you winked at her right, she'd show you the way to the downstairs toilet where Frankie played bathroom attendant. Southern Coffee had the distinct feeling of home. The familiar smell of mold in an old basement was enough to put a grin on my face. No, I don't want it. No, the one stairs led to the outside world. Frankie had a bond with that old shaker at the end of the bar. I was surprised he hadn't named it. He could sling a mean drink that would only use the good liquor if he liked you. Frankie liked me. I grabbed the wine bottle on the bar and examined its label. It featured a picture of grapes and the words, "Sacramental use only." Frankie looked at me with a spark in his eye. "Go ahead," he said. "Give it a swig." Alright, I'll give it a try. I grabbed the half-empty bottle that had been next to the bottle, half-empty glass that had been next to the bottle, blah, 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 and swirled some of its contents between my gums. "Bit spicy, ain't it?" Frankie asked. "It's good," I nodded, and gulped the rest down. "It'll cost you too," he said with a smile, and he grabbed the bottle from me, turning it through his hands. "Rabbis charge more than a nickel for this beauty. Only this type of Napa wine is made from the Zinfandel grape. It has a unique aroma." I'd been trying to learn more about wine. Seemed everyone knew their stuff but me. I noted what Frankie had said about the origin of the grape as he sat the bottle back on the Are we gonna end up crossing a rabbi again? We did it in the Shiver in New York. Is this like an East-West thing? "Since when do you know grapes?" I chided. Frankie let out a bellied laugh. "Some of those grapes are older than you, Malone, and I've known about them since I was a small tot. That's why I'm so good at my job, you know," Frankie sighed. "Too bad more folks can't taste them. That woman's league is the devil." This is going to be a bit of dialogue explaining what's going on. The Women's Christian Temperance Union was now under feminist Frances Willard, a positive force for the suffrage of women, but her staunch support of prohibition, along with the union's massive political clout, irked the very wet San Franciscan public, and she particularly wasn't popular with bartenders. "Take a seat," he said. "I'll make you something else." He'd been a decent pitcher, so that's baseball. He was a big fella, that's a description of his size. He was a big fella, both wide and tall, and must have been a little over 50. He had a round head, kind brown eyes, and a cropped ring of grey hair encircling an otherwise bald scalp. His voice had a warm timbre that complemented his tobacco and whiskey smells of his speakeasy. I said at the bar, "You got the spooks, PC?" he asked. "You're worn as a catcher's mitt." I suppose my exhaustion showed. "I won $100 for nothing, and I can't let it go." I told Frankie about the case, the threatening letter sent to Connor Green, how he assumed it was related to his bootlegging, and his suspicion of Redstone Stable. The story took longer than I'd wanted, Frankie showing genuine interest by asking many questions. When I finished, he threw me the whiskey sour he'd been stirring. I took a large gulp and gave a sigh as thanks.